Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning back in to another video on the crypto markets. We're going to do a bit of Bitcoin TA in this video. I'm going to go over the market real quick, and then I'm going to drop a couple more videos in the upcoming days on just more like how do I use these certain TA tools, these indicators like RSI, MACD, Ichimoku clouds. I'm just going to kind of go over how I use those to get a little better analysis, but in the time being, for the time being, I'm going to go over this Red Sea that we're having. Some people are getting some like PTSD looking at all this, like, oh no, we're back in it again. And some traders are actually calling for a pretty large decrease again. I'm not so convinced yet, but one thing I wanted to go over and just kind of throw it out there for everybody is if you look at TradingView, sorry, I'll get my desktop out of the way there. If you just go to tradingview.com, this is a way where I can kind of get other ideas, because it's hard when you're just looking at these charts all day by yourself. You sort of don't understand what's going on fully, and so it's kind of good to go in there and you can see the top authors of today, the week, the month, all time, and you can look at this is just on TradingView's homepage, and this is good for like the S&P, the NASDAQ. Like you can trade Forex and like look at all the charts for those too. But a lot of this stuff is for crypto. And so you can click on each post and you can see what these guys are thinking as well. And they have a ton of people looking at their posts, and they have a lot of likes and comments, and you can kind of get an idea of what they're thinking. And so if you look at enough of these, like this says Bitcoin USD, this is Bitcoin USD, you can see what these people are thinking of this outlook in the next couple of weeks or whatever. So this is a cool tool. So I definitely recommend doing this and not just watching, this video. I'm not a pro by any means. So, I sort of taught this to myself. I read some books about it, and I've been doing it for a while, but doesn't mean I'm going to get it right every time. So anyway, that's just one of the ways that I get some ideas on where things are going. So if you remember, this was the top of our 5 wave up here, and I think most people will agree with that. A lot of people were thinking, there's an ABC corrective wave down to here, and that would be, your A down here, your B, and then your C. And then there's other traders calling for a more drastic correction than that. But what I wanted to do is just get into this rebound that we just had and draw a couple Elliott waves. And this is where, Ellioticians and people who specialize in Elliott waves might argue over where this one wave ends. Some will say here, some will say here. Some will say here as well. I'm more inclined to think that it's this one here, then your 2 wave, your 3 wave, 4 wave, and then your 5 wave up here. And I think it's been kind of consistent where the 3 waves have been a bit larger than our 5 waves recently, especially in this downward trend that we've been in. So that's one of the reasons that I'm using that as my 3 and my 1. And then I think our 5 wave has just ended up breaking through this resistance line that we've been on for quite some time now. So what I want to do is bring us in to this area here and kind of draw another Elliott wave. And we can have our 3 wave up here, and then our 4 and our 5 up in here. And this can be changed as well. Like we could have our 3 wave here, down to here, and then up here. But this just makes the most sense to me looking at it for as long as I've looked at it. If we kind of zoom in here, we can see what I'm talking about. And so when we have our Elliott waves coinciding like this and they're ending at 5, we're expecting our Elliott corrective wave. And to me, we're sort of in the midst of it right here. So that would be our A, and then I think our B will probably come up and test this support or this resistance line again. And then our C will probably end up coming back down in this region, most likely. And what I want to do is draw these trend lines for you. And these aren't going to be perfect the first time I draw them. But this is just standard trend line there. It doesn't have to be completely perfect. Let me delete that, move this up. All right. And then we have this support here. Let's draw it in there somewhere. And like I said, it's not completely perfect. You know, depending on what time frame you're looking at, this could be different. If we just go to the end of these candles, that might be a little easier. They're all, just assume that they're all at the end of each candle. I think we could be, you know, where the candle's closing here. I think we could be looking at something like this, where we could see even something like that. And once we resolve this corrective wave, and hopefully we can break back through this resistance, and maybe we'll end up over here somewhere, still below this A. Maybe it's pretty darn close. Elliott waves, there's like 21 different types of waves. You can have all sorts of different kinds of corrective waves. You can have your B wave be really high, and this almost looks like a equilateral triangle. There's all sorts of different ways to do this. But my thought is it's going to be something like this, just based on the support and resistance lines that we're looking at. And I think that's pretty good. And I think something to be watching, like within the next day or so, is to be looking at where this thing ends up. We might be getting squeezed into this little wedge in here, and we could go up, we could go down. It's very difficult to tell. To me, I'm leaning towards bullish on this whole picture here because of what we've seen. We've seen an increase in volume once we hit our bottom, and we've seen a pretty dramatic increase in price. We've seen a lot of people talking about all sorts of news, the good news coming out of the SEC, the CFTC meetings. You're not hearing a bunch of bad stuff anymore. You know, that doesn't necessarily drive the price or anything, but we're seeing good volume. Some people are saying, you know, oh, the volume's so low. Well, I just like to look back over time, and I think that the volume looks pretty healthy. I like to look at the RSI. I like to look at the MACD, the moving averages, all of that stuff. And I'll be doing videos on those in the coming days. But basically, to me, if we can cross over this resistance line here and sort of trade in this region, I think we're going to be in a good spot. And I don't think that this channel will last forever, obviously, because if we zoom out, that is a pretty steep rise for a while. I don't think we're going to hit 20K in this region, right? I think we're going to end up breaking through here and kind of maybe we'll be trading sideways for a while. It's very difficult to tell, but we'll have to take it day by day. But this is something to be watching. Now, what the other traders are talking about, and I'll get into a couple other things on this chart in a minute. There's one thing that people are looking at, and that is this inverse head and shoulders that people are still talking about, which I'm not super sold on, but you would have like your neckline somewhere in this region, and then you would have this as your left shoulder, your head, and then your right shoulder. And that's something that is possible. I'm not super convinced, but you know, you could have something, I should have just drawn a triangle in this situation, but you would have your right shoulder come down, something like this, and that would complete this head and shoulders pattern that we're looking at. And then, generally speaking, when it's inverse head and shoulders like this, you'll see a pretty nice rise in price afterwards. And so that is something people are looking at. And then the more negative and grim outlook that people are looking at is this right here. So like we said before, we thought we were having our A, B, our C correction, and this was the bottom. Well, if you don't believe that this is the bottom, we could be in store for this triangle corrective pattern here, this ABCDE wave, where this E would come back and touch this support line, and then we would form a lower low. And I'm not super keen on this idea. I don't know for sure if this would happen. I'm seeing people call for 1,000. I'm seeing people call 1,500. I drew this fib retracement, and where the one wave started back way last year in July of 2017, we were sitting at like $1,800. So if we did get to 1,500, that would be more than a 100% correction. So that would be pretty ridiculous if that happened. I don't really see that happening. I did draw some support lines. Basically, when you have congestion, a lot of, sideways movement, in the past, you will see that become support in the future. So here we had some up in this region and then in this region as well. So maybe at 5,800-ish, maybe at, 35 to 4,000 range. And then back again here at like the $25 to $3,000 range, we had some pretty good consolidation in the past. So if this does come to fruition, and it will look like this at first, and then it will continue, if this does happen, then it will keep continuing. I will be very closely watching all of these support lines here. So like where the previous congestion was, and that would be somewhere at 8,000. Then we'd have again at, the 6,000, and then we'd have again here, and then here. And then if we keep breaking through like butter, like we did before, then, there will be a stop somewhere. Somewhere it will stop and the buyers will come back. And that's, that's what we will be keeping an eye out on in the future. But I just wanted to bring this up because I know it's been talked about quite a bit recently. I don't necessarily think this is what's going to happen. So, I think it's possible. Anything is possible. But we're kind of seeing a comeback here on the 1 hour chart. We have this small green candle that's going on right now. And, if we can just break up above here in the next, few hours, then that'll give me a lot of confidence for the next, few weeks. So with that, I'll make an update video in the next, couple days, day or so, and give my thoughts on where we're at. If you like this content, subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing those RSI, the Ichimoku clouds, the, moving averages. I'll be doing some tutorials on how I use those and how I kind of taught myself how to use them and how I'm like looking into TradingView. Maybe I'll do a live like TradingView thing in the future. So with that, I'll catch you all in the next video. Take it easy.